Touching twist, billionaire surprises struggling mom by paying $2M hospital bill revealed. In the dim light of dawn, Sarah leaned against the kitchen counter, cold coffee in hand, her gaze drifting toward the calendar where Jack's cheerful drawings clashed with the grim reality of her responsibilities. Bills piled high, just like the worry lines forming on her forehead. Every single day felt like a tightening noose around her throat, and now, with Jack injured, that weight multiplied 1,000-fold. She had been juggling 2 jobs just to scrape by. Now, all she could think about was her son lying fragile and still in that sterile hospital bed. How could she possibly navigate this new nightmare? With no health insurance and the thought of a staggering bill looming over her like a storm cloud, the very foundation of her life was crumbling. Doubt gnawed at her insides. Was she doing enough? Was she even worthy of help? As a single mother, she had always prided herself on her independence. Every sleepless night spent at her second job, every dropped shift to rush to a school play had been for this moment the hope of a better future for Jack. But here she was, crumbling beneath the weight of despair, her mind racing with the sinister possibilities of what would happen if she couldn't pay foreclosure, bankruptcy, losing her son's smile forever. Her father would tell her to be resilient, that strength lay in accepting help when it came, but how could she? She'd spent years building a life from scraps. Didn't that mean something? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as the emergency room doors swung open, her heart sank further. She could almost hear each dollar from her meager paycheck slipping away, one by one, to opulent hospital room fees. How would she explain to Jack that she couldn't fix this? The anguish tightened in her chest as she grappled with her next moves. What if they took him from her? What if the bill came in, and she couldn't find a way to pay it? The very thought was unbearable. The flickering fluorescent lights above seemed to mock her resilient spirit, and with every passing moment, the reality of her dependence on the kindness of strangers crept closer. She was aware of the stares from nurses and doctors, possibly judging her for needing aid. Would they look at her differently after this? Her pride felt at stake. As she took a shaky breath and entered Jack's room, she could see the tiny bandage on his head, the innocent expression of confusion painting his young features. He wasn't the only one in pain. She was, too, battling against the oppressive weight of shame and fear of becoming a charity case. That sliver of hopelessness she felt wrapped around her heart like barbed wire, constricting tighter with each passing minute. What would happen when the bill arrived? Would she be able to accept help, or would she let her pride dictate her life's path? The question spiraled, leaving her breathless in an endless cycle of anxiety and helplessness, the silence of the room echoing with unspoken fears. And as she held Jack's small hand in hers, another truth loomed large. If she ever discovered who had come to her rescue, would it bring her liberation or just a greater chain? In the quiet stillness of Jack's hospital room, Sarah's thoughts buzzed like a swarm of bees, each one louder than the last. She could hardly focus on the reassuring beeping of the machines, her mind entangled in the web of uncertainty. The weight of the past weeks rested heavily on her shoulders. Each sacrifice, every sleepless night had been for Jack, yet it all felt meaningless now as she watched him struggle. "Mom, what's wrong?" Jack's voice was a soft, fragile thread pulling her back from the brink of despair. His concern shattered the wall of worry she had built around her. "Nothing, sweetheart," she replied, forcing a smile. "I'm just so glad you're okay." But even as she spoke, guilt tightened its grip on her heart. She wasn't just worried, she was panicking beneath the surface. The 2M bill that loomed over her like a dark cloud wasn't just a number, it threatened her entire existence, and accepting charity felt like a betrayal of everything she stood for. What kind of mother was she if she couldn't provide for her child, protect him from this, as the days turned to a blur, Sarah sought solace in the most mundane tasks. She organized Jack's crayons on the hospital table and rearranged the flowers sent by well-meaning friends, avoiding the gaze of the nurses who carried their own burdens. She tried to distract herself, but the cold clinical environment only magnified her anxiety. Each visitor made her uncomfortable. They were all witnesses to her struggles, and it tore at her pride, but in the quiet moments, when it was just the two of them, Sarah started to realize that Jack needed her strength more than ever. She couldn't keep wallowing in self-pity, it was time to act. Perhaps she could negotiate with the hospital or seek assistance from local charities. There had to be alternative solutions, ways to regain control. One afternoon, while Jack was napping, Sarah slipped out into the fluorescent-lit corridor. It felt surreal, as if she was stepping into another world. Confronting the hospital administration felt like facing her own fears head-on. What if they ridiculed her questions? What if she was met with indifference? But those thoughts began to transform. She felt a flicker of determination. Compelled to take charge, she approached the filing desk where a kind-faced woman greeted her. "Excuse me," Sarah began, hesitantly yet with a deep resolve. "I need to talk about Jack's case, the bills, everything." The woman nodded, her expression softening immediately. "Of course. Let us see what we can do. You're not alone in this." With each word exchanged, Sarah felt a new understanding emerging within her. It wasn't just her pride that mattered, it was the resilience she could model for Jack. She began to articulate her struggles, revealing not only her vulnerability but also her fierce love for her son, illuminating the harsh realities they faced together. As she walked away from that desk, she felt a shift within her, a blend of fear and hope gearing her toward a path of advocacy. She may have once hesitated to accept help, but she was beginning to realize the power of community, the strength in collective endeavor. Starting with herself, determined, Sarah returned to Jack's bedside. He looked up at her with those big, trusting eyes. In that moment, she knew she needed to embrace the support meant for them, even if it meant reshaping her understanding of strength. That evening, Sarah sat down to research options for nonprofit organizations that could assist families in crisis. As she navigated the lists on her phone, she stumbled upon a forum of parents discussing medical financial aid. Intrigued, she noted a nearby charity, with glowing reviews about the compassion and effectiveness of their assistance. As she clutched her phone, she couldn't shake the notion that this was just the beginning. Those feelings of liberation mixed with anxiety and anticipation as she prepared to face the next chapter of her life's battle. But for now, with Jack sleeping peacefully by her side, there was still one question lingering in her heart. Could she conquer her pride and turn the tide in their favor? Little did she know, the answers awaited her just around the corner, and it was time for a confrontation she had long avoided, the truth behind her unexpected benefactor. The shrill beep of the hospital machines created an unsettling soundtrack as Sarah leaned against the wall, her heart racing. She had spent hours buried in research and discussion forums, the glowing screen illuminating her anxiety as she tapped at her phone. The prospect of seeking aid still felt daunting, yet the thought of helplessness was worse. The charity she discovered seemed promising, but could she trust them? With renewed purpose, she returned to Jack's room, feeling as though she had crossed an invisible threshold between despair and determination. She needed to speak to the charity directly, to assess their commitment. Sarah picked up a flyer that had been placed next to Jack's bed, detailing the organization. The name leaped out at her, and an inexplicable urge to reach out gripped her. "Mom?" Jack stirred, his voice thick with sleep. Despite the hospital gown, he looked small and fragile against the stark white sheets. "Yes, sweetheart?" she responded, kneeling beside him. "Are the other kids okay?" he asked, eyes wide and innocent. The question pierced through her. Jack had been more concerned with his peers than his own battles, and she realized then that he needed more than a survivor, he needed a fighter. "They're all going to be fine, Jack," she assured him, but the thought of the other children's stories stirred a flicker of guilt within her. Why was she only focusing on their struggle? After checking on Jack's medications, Sarah stepped out again, now fueled by an abrupt urgency. She needed answers, and fast. Entering the bustling waiting area, she heard fragments of conversations involving families engaged in their battles. Suddenly, she wasn't just a mother swamped in crisis, she was part of a narrative much larger than herself. Taking a deep breath, she pulled out her phone and dialed the charity. The line clicked, and a cheerful voice answered. "Thank you for calling Hope Rising. How may I assist you today?" Initially, the words stuck in her throat, but as she explained Jack's situation, something shifted within her. "I'm unsure what help I can ask for. I'm proud," and the admission hung in the air, raw and uncomfortable. "You're doing the right thing by reaching out," the voice soothed, understanding etched in every inflection. "Let us see how we can help you." As the conversation unfolded, the warmth and care in the woman's voice soothed her tangled nerves. They discussed options, grants, counseling services, and ways to tackle the overwhelming hospital bills. Each suggestion felt like a salve to her fear-scaled heart. By the time the call had ended, she had not only listened to a full inventory of possibilities but also forged a connection that reignited her belief in community, even if she had initially resisted it. But there was more to uncover. Sarah leaned against a wall, feeling strengthened by the interaction. What had once been a shameful burden now felt like a cluster of resources to utilize. A flame of hope ignited within her as she realized that accepting help did not denigrate her abilities but adorned her struggle with the solidarity she thought she had to carry alone. Returning to Jack, she couldn't shake the sense that something monumental had shifted, not only in her approach to their situation but also in her vision for the future, one where pride mingled with practicality. "Mom?" Jack's small voice cut through her reverie again, vulnerable and inquisitive. "Yes, Jack? Are we going to be okay? I mean, really okay?" The sincerity in his voice brought tears to her eyes. Sarah wrapped her arms around him, holding on tightly. "We're going to be okay," she whispered firmly. "We're going to fight together." Yet, as she pondered the call and its implications, another thought crept in: the truth about her unexpected benefactor. A name persisted in the back of her mind, a wealthy figure connected to the charity. She had to confront that reality. It was time to unveil the mysteries behind the assistance they were pursuing. The next step was more than just advocacy, it was shadowy territory leading to difficult revelations. Who had provided the driving force behind the philanthropy that could potentially save them? And what strings were inevitably attached? Sarah took a deep breath, resolved to uncover the truth, aware that the answers might change everything she understood about their situation. The real fight was just beginning. The lingering tension of uncertainty tightened around Sarah like a vice as she stepped out of the hospital room, her resolve now pulsing with urgency. She checked her phone, noting the missed calls and unanswered messages, but she couldn't afford to dwell on distractions. Jack needed her, and so did the truth about this benefactor who had unwittingly entered their lives. The same curiosity that had emerged during the phone call to Hope Rising surged again. A figure emerged in her memory: Mark Lansing, the billionaire rumored to support several charitable causes, including the one Jack's potential aid stemmed from. Rumors swirled in the hospital corridors, some claiming he had visions for a better world, while others spoke of an equally potent desire for publicity, an angle she found both distracting and disturbing. There's no place for naivety now, Sarah thought. She needed clarity, not only for Jack but for herself. She clenched her fists resolutely, heart pounding as she steeled herself for the next step. Information was power, and she was done feeling powerless. Navigating through the maze of hospital hallways, she noticed the room numbers drifting by, each a potential narrative of pain and hope. Left unchecked, she had allowed her fears to swirl around her far too long, but stepping outside her comfort zone felt like a welcome challenge. She approached the receptionist's desk, an oasis of efficiency amid chaos. "Excuse me," she said, her voice clipped but steady. "Can you please tell me how to contact someone at Hope Rising? Preferably someone involved in the funding process." The receptionist looked up, surprised. I can give you the main office number. But I can't guarantee access to anyone specific. Just the number, please. Her tone was firm, a blend of assertiveness and desperation pouring into her words. With a quick nod, the receptionist handed her a business card. Sarah memorized the digits like a lifeline and quickly retreated, the chaos of the hospital buzzing behind her. She had to think strategically. If Mark Lansing was the financial backing behind Hope Rising, then his motivations were crucial to understanding what assistance would really mean for her family. After a few minutes of pacing outside, she took a deep breath and dialed the number. The line connected after a few rings. "Hello, Hope Rising. How can I assist you today?" A voice answered, warm yet formal. "I'd like to speak to someone regarding the funding, specifically about Mark Lansing's involvement," she blurted, her confidence intensifying as she pressed onward. "Can I ask what your situation is?" The voice responded, cautiously inquisitive. "I'm the mother of a child who's receiving treatment, and I need to understand the implications of this help. It's not just about finances, it's personal, and I want to ensure my son's future isn't tied to conditions I don't agree with." "I understand your concern. Let me connect you to our financial coordinator. Please hold." The pulse of her heartbeat drummed in rhythm with the hold music. The connection felt like stepping into another world. New possibilities skittered across her thoughts. Perhaps if she understood the ins and outs of the charity's operation, she could fortify her position, make her choices with clarity instead of fear. "Hello, this is Clara. I'm the financial coordinator at Hope Rising," another voice chimed through the line. "How can I help you?" Over the next few minutes, Sarah laid bare her concerns. The conversation unfolded like an intricate dance, each step bringing her closer to the truths she sought. The discussion shifted toward the nature of financial support and Mark Lansing's willingness to invest in critical healthcare initiatives. Mark's commitment stems from his personal experiences, which compel him to give back, Clara explained. His donations are not merely charitable gestures, he personally witnesses the impact of every decision he makes. The implication of the billionaire's emotional stake grabbed Sarah. A flicker of empathy stirred within her. Could someone so removed from the daily grind have genuine motives? Or was she simply grasping at straws, desperate to believe in the goodness of this lifeline? But before she could dive deeper, Clara added, "There are strict policies, of course. We're committed to ensuring that families maintain autonomy and dignity through their experiences with us." Trepidation clashed with hope inside her, a spectrum of emotions swirling and morphing. The anticipation of potential good collided with the uncomfortable possibility of strings she had not yet considered, deepening her internal conflict. Sarah had taken significant strides today, a push toward enlightenment that would not just preserve her son's chances but redefine her own role amid the chaos. But as revelation swam into focus, inner questions bubbled. Could she really trust in the man behind the charity, or was she setting herself and Jack up for deeper disappointment? The answers looming in front of her felt precarious. They could illuminate the way forward, or plunge her into further turmoil. The storm of her new reality had just begun to churn. Sarah clutched her phone tightly, determined not to let go. The true reckoning loomed. Would she be able to navigate through this landscape of hope, autonomy, and underlying motives? The next conversation she needed to have could change everything. As Sarah hung up, she sat on the edge of a plastic chair in the waiting area, her mind a cacophony of thoughts. Her fingers drummed against her knee, a rhythmic expression of the mounting tension coiling inside her. The conversation had unveiled snippets of hope, yet shadows of doubt lurked in every corner. Mark Lansing's unexpected emotional ties to his philanthropy felt like a double-edged sword. Part of her wanted to trust, while another part recoiled at the notion of vulnerability. She sensed a shift within herself, a burgeoning determination to reclaim control of her narrative. It was no longer just about Jack, it was about asserting her place in this uninvited situation, carving a path forward that aligned with her values. She had learned today that sometimes the most powerful decisions arise from deeper insight, not blind faith. The light in the waiting area flickered, amplifying her internal disarray. In moments like these, clarity was both her ally and her adversary. She needed to investigate further, and fast. With renewed intensity, she stood. The prospect of Mark Lansing loomed large, yet she had to approach him not as a beggar seeking aid but as a mother standing firm for her child. A contingent agreement could leverage her power, not diminish it. Her instincts beckoned her to learn more, to prepare for an eventual confrontation. If Lansing was a man of influence and true passion, she would seek that spark of humanity to build a rapport. Yet, if he was merely a puppet master orchestrating from behind the curtain, she had to expose the strings before they ensnared her and Jack. Sarah pulled out her phone again, revving her research engine into gear. She began to search for articles about Mark Lansing, hoping to uncover a deeper understanding of him. The glow from her screen illuminated her determined expression, revealing a myriad of opinions and stories, each masking a layer of the truth. One article caught her eye, detailing a donation event Lansing had hosted, emphasizing his background and particularly the loss he experienced that fueled his philanthropic desires. The narrative felt authentic. His family had suffered a similar health crisis, and all evidence suggested he had overcome personal demons to rise to success. Yet, the more she read, the more questions materialized. Discovering vulnerabilities was essential, but where did she even begin? The strategy of mapping out potential allies had always been a game in the corporate world, and now, it felt like she was back in the boardroom of her former life, strategizing over how to negotiate and confront. As she formulated a plan, something tapped surreptitiously at the back of her mind. An old contact, a former colleague who was intimately aware of Lansing's philanthropic ventures. Could she leverage this connection? It was a risk. Reaching out might expose her to rejection or, worse, paint her as desperate. But staying stagnant was a greater fear. She exhaled, willing herself to embrace this discomfort. By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm glow through the hospital windows, she had composed a text, each word weighed carefully. In it, she outlined her situation and the depths of her inquiry. Her finger hovered over the send button, and in that pregnant pause, she felt the gravity of her decision reverberate within her. Send, she muttered under her breath, solidifying her commitment to this path, her resolve now forged stronger than ever. This moment would mark the turning point, an affirmation that she was no longer just reacting but rather acting with purpose. As she returned to Jack's room, her heart surged with hope and a tinge of anxiety. Every step felt like a testament to her evolution, a shift from avoidance to aggressive pursuit. She was determined to confront Mark Lansing. But as threads of her strategy wove together, another question nagged at her: could she genuinely engage the billionaire without sacrificing her boundaries? Her internal dialogue churned, questioning the wisdom of seeking help from a man whose motivations remained shrouded in ambiguity. Sarah knew she would have to face him soon, but with which emotions and defenses? The ever-present tension hinted that new revelations lay ahead. The next chapter of her life loomed just beyond her grasp. Would it bring clarity or force her deeper into the storm? The soft beeping of machines and the muted conversations in the corridors became a backdrop to Sarah's tumultuous thoughts as she made her way back to Jack's room. The crisp, sterile scent of the hospital hung in the air, reminding her of her purpose, a purpose that now felt deceptively exhilarating and terrifying. How would she step into the ring with someone like Mark Lansing? Could her instincts be enough to navigate not only the conversation but the emotional territory involved? Jack lay quietly on the bed, his small frame eclipsed by the beeping monitors that measured his vital signs. Sarah brushed strands of hair away from his forehead, feeling a surge of maternal protectiveness. He was her everything, and she needed to ensure he had every chance to thrive. Yet, as she gazed at him, the battle inside her intensified. The stakes felt impossibly high, and she couldn't afford to lose. That old contact flickered in her mind like a flame, guiding her toward a potential lifeline. What was Julian's perspective? Had he ever seen this side of Lansing? Memories of boardroom meetings flooded back, where Julian had been the strategist, deftly parsing through complex dynamics with ease. Could he still conjure that expertise in this vastly different context, with a resolve she hadn't known she possessed? Sarah tore herself away from the comforting bubble of Jack's room and moved towards the waiting area. It was time to act on her instincts. She pulled her phone from her pocket, scrolling through her contacts until she landed on Julian's name. The pulse of hesitation throbbed under her skin as her thumb hovered over the call button. The decision hung between her rational mind and her emotional heart, battling for supremacy. She inhaled deeply and pressed call. Sarah? Wow, it's been ages. Julian's voice crackled with familiarity that almost startled her. They fell into conversation, threading their way through the small talk before she brought up Mark Lansing. What do you know about him, Julian? I'm stepping into a situation with him, and I need an inside track, she confessed, her voice steady despite the racing of her heart. Julian's tone shifted, concern threading through his words. Lansing's complicated, Sarah. On the surface, he comes off as a generous benefactor, but underneath, there's a ruthlessness you wouldn't expect from someone in his position. You need to be careful. What's your angle? She paused. Was she truly ready to reveal her motives? Something held her back, tethering her to the fear of being vulnerable. It's about my son, Julian. It's not just about the money, it's a deeper fight for his future. Oh, Sarah, he said, his voice softer now. You're not just stepping into a negotiation, you're playing a game of chess against a master. His words struck her like a thunderbolt. This was more than just a plea, it was a strategic dance. She could feel her previous role as a corporate negotiator resurfacing, awakening skills she hadn't exercised in years. The shift from a passive recipient of charity to an active contender in her son's future felt intoxicating. With Julian's insights, she felt empowered. She had a clearer picture of Lansing, the challenges ahead, and the intricate dance of negotiation she would need to master. As the conversation wrapped up, she promised to keep in touch, and they arranged a follow-up later in the week. Returning to Jack's room, Sarah felt a renewed sense of purpose imbued with focus and strategy. But beneath that flickering flame of determination lay the nagging panic of unpredictability. What if she miscalculated? What if she pressed too hard or not enough? She would have to walk a tightrope, assertive yet vulnerable, knowledgeable yet humble. As she settled back in beside Jack, the uncertainty loomed larger than ever. The stakes kept rising. It wasn't just about finding help but also about navigating a new life path defined by grit, negotiation, and perhaps even a touch of manipulation. And as her resolve solidified, one thought surged above the rest: the time had come to face not only Lansing but the parts of herself she had long buried. What other truths would she unearth as she delved into this complex confrontation? The answers awaited her, lurking just beyond the horizon. As Sarah sat beside Jack, the rhythmic beeping of the monitors became a metronome for her racing thoughts. The conversation with Julian played over in her mind, echoing like a wake-up call. She had oscillated between disbelief and determination throughout their talk, realizing the full extent of the challenges ahead. A game of chess against a master. She took a deep breath and let her fingers hover over Jack's hand, reminding herself of his fragile strength. Her son's well-being was not just a personal battle, it was illuminating her latent potential. What if the skills she had once wielded in the business realm could be retooled for this unforeseen scenario? Her heart raced with both apprehension and a burgeoning sense of agency. In her years at the firm, she had navigated countless negotiations with sharp instincts, often unaware of the true extent of her capabilities. But this was different. The stakes were uniquely personal. Daisy, her colleague, had once said that to truly advocate for someone, you had to be willing to step into the arena. Sarah soon realized that this was her arena for Jack. She would fearlessly prepare for battle. With a renewed sense of purpose, she began mentally mapping out her strategy against Lansing. She would need information about him, not just the business side, but his motivations, his weaknesses. To wield the knowledge like a scalpel, to cut through the expected niceties and blur the lines of a typical negotiation. In the quiet afterglow of the hospital room, she opened her laptop. Browsing through articles on Lansing, she spotted photos featuring him with influential figures, coupled with quotes filled with charm and charisma. Yet, an unsavory pattern emerged in the background. A few headlines hinted at more mercenary actions masked by benevolence. Her analytical mind went to work, sifting through the information like a detective piecing together a profile. The clock ticked away, but her focus remained laser-like. This wasn't just idle research, it was the precursor to a confrontation that would require more than just emotional demands. Sarah began drafting a strategy plan, outlining every potential angle and pitfall. She documented Lansing's known associates and their backgrounds, looking for leverage that might reveal his vulnerabilities. Hours passed, losing track of how the world outside shifted. Her fingers typed fervently, fueled by a mix of caffeine and an unyielding desire to protect what mattered most: Jack. With each keystroke, her confidence began to swell. But amidst the fervor, a gnawing sensation also surfaced. What if she was crossing an ethical line? Shouldn't this be about genuine care and concern rather than strategic gymnastics? The thought left her momentarily paralyzed. Just because Lansing played a game of chess didn't mean she had to. Perhaps vulnerability could coexist with strategy. As her mind grappled with the duality of her approach, Sarah made a decision. She would extend an olive branch during their negotiation, presenting herself not only as an adversary but as a mother who yearned for help. The authenticity would be her strongest card. After all, a sincere intent could soften the hardest of hearts. Feeling a mix of trepidation and optimism, she closed her laptop. Jack stirred slightly, and she was reminded of the very reason she was embarking on this journey. When she looked at him, she saw not just a son but the embodiment of her tenacity. Tomorrow, she would meet Mark Lansing, stepping into the role of protector and advocate. She felt the weight of the moment resonate within her. The stakes had changed, and so had she. What unexpected revelations awaited her in that meeting? Would confronting Lansing reveal truths about her own resilience, or would it expose buried fears she hadn't yet confronted? As Sarah turned out the light, she pondered, was she prepared to face not just a billionaire, but the shadows lurking within? As dawn broke, casting a muted glow across the hospital room, Sarah felt the weight of the day's impending confrontation settle heavily in her chest. The flickering fluorescent lights buzzed softly, mirroring the hum of anxiety coursing through her veins. Today, she would meet Mark Lansing, the very man whose decisions had landed Jack in this vulnerable position. The ticking clock became a relentless reminder of the approaching moment. She rose from her chair and paced the small confines of the room, every stride echoing her determination. Each footfall punctuated her resolve. She would not be merely a passive player but an active contender who understood the complexity of stakes far beyond her immediate emotional turmoil. She envisioned Lansing in her mind, a confident figure enveloped in his aura of power and connections. But what lay beneath that polished exterior? Greed? A shattered past? The possibilities felt like tangled vines, and she needed to unravel them before stepping into his world. As she engaged in quiet meditation, she ran through her plans. The olive branch was vital, but it needed to be accompanied by a robust yet sincere articulation of her needs and Jack's plight. Offering vulnerability as a strategy wasn't mutually exclusive, it could serve to bring out the humanity in an otherwise daunting figure. She had seen it before. The power of a story transcended the might of mere numbers on a balance sheet. With her heart steadying, Sarah recalled moments from her business days where she had diffused tension with a thoughtful remark or strategic pause. She set herself reminders: maintain clarity, listen intently, and stay open to an unexpected turn. Today was not merely about a negotiation, it was a chance to connect, prompting empathy and forging an alliance rooted in shared humanity. Regardless of their economic stratospheres, the hospital's antiseptic air mixed with the aroma of coffee from the corridor, awakening a primal need to sustain herself. She glanced briefly at Jack, still sleeping, chest rising and falling steadily in the rhythm of childhood. A sudden surge of love filled her, fueling the fire in her belly. This wasn't just a matter of dollars and cents, it was about safeguarding his future and embracing her new identity as a fierce advocate. As she gathered her notes and placed her laptop in her bag, a fleeting thought crossed her mind: what if Lansing had no intention of cooperating? What if he chose to dismiss her plea outright, viewing it as an imposition rather than a request. The uncertainty gnawed at her, but it struck her, that was the nature of confrontation, and she had to be prepared for it. Standing in the hallway outside Jack's room, she took a moment to breathe deeply, the stale hospital air filling her lungs. Trepidation mixed with tangible excitement, she was ready to emerge from the shadows of her past self. In that liminal space, she felt her future shift. The elevator doors opened, and she stepped inside, anticipation coursing through her. As the walls of glass closed around her, she felt their confinement reveal a larger truth. The enormity of her responsibility was mirrored not in isolation, but in the potential change one conversation could bring forth. When she arrived at the lobby, she instantly spotted Lansing, charismatic yet distant, discussing matters with a couple of well-dressed associates. The overwhelming presence of his authority was palpable, yet beneath that polished veneer, she sensed an instability she could exploit. As she approached, her nerves crystallized into focus. One step, then another, each a manifestation of her intent. She was no longer merely a mother seeking assistance, she was a force in her own right. No longer defined by the world around her, but by the fierce love for her son. The moment of reckoning was at hand. Would she be able to bridge the chasm between their lived experiences, or would Lansing's mighty demeanor crush her appeal? She was ready to challenge him, to lay forth her case wrapped in authenticity. The stakes had raised higher than she could have ever imagined. And for the first time, she questioned what it truly meant to win. As she extended her hand towards him, ready to make her pitch, tension filled the air. What would Lansing reveal in response? Would the careful steps she had taken bear fruit, or would this meeting unearth a more profound testament to her own resolve? Sarah moved closer to Lansing, analyzing his posture and expressions as she walked. Standing opposite him felt like staring at a vast mountain range. His confidence radiated a strength she had to overcome. Her thoughts spiraled, weighing her emotions against the cold logic that dictated business on this level. His gaze flickered toward her as she reached him, and the moment their hands clasped was electric. She felt every ounce of her fear mixing with steadfast purpose, grounding her within the shoreline of emotional chaos. "Mr. Lansing," she began, her voice steady yet softer than she anticipated. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me today." He offered a curt nod, his attention split between her and the executive weighing in on some paper. Sarah could feel the divide. Here she stood, desperate yet empowered, and he was seemingly unfazed by her presence. Yet something inside her ignited. She wouldn't stumble now. Drawing a breath, she allowed the warmth of Jack's love to wash over her. "I'm here because my son needs specialized treatment. The expenses have become unbearable, and I'm seeking." "Let's cut to the chase," he interrupted, his rich voice authoritative, yet lackluster. "You want me to cover Jack's treatment costs? How much are we talking?" Pain coiled within her, but she pressed on, unyielding. "The total will likely exceed $2 million. The figure hung between them like a curtain, revealing a different kind of vulnerability. Lansing raised an eyebrow, his smile betraying skepticism. "Why should I help? Do you even begin to comprehend how many requests I receive daily? How many people who are far worse off than your son?" Her heart raced, but she steadied herself, searching for the humanity amid his cold pragmatism. "My son is not just a statistic," she said, trying to project her truth with sincerity. "He is a child filled with potential, laughter, and dreams. Imagine being in his position, lost in a world filled with uncertainties. I'm not asking for an obligation, I'm asking for an opportunity." Intrigued yet slightly amused, Lansing leaned against the counter, relating to the positioning of power by their conflicting intents. "And what's in it for me?" He was a predator, she realized, sizing her up and her weaknesses as the potential gain materialized through the voice that kept wounding her resolve. But a thread of clarity sparked through her thoughts. She needed to flip the narrative. "It's about legacy." She saw the moment his eyes flinched, flashing realization. "You have the chance to be more than an impressive corporate figure. You could be a catalyst for change. Helping Jack and perhaps others could shift the perception of your influence, pave the way for a foundation dedicated to childhood healthcare. Your choice can set a precedent. A silence fell, heavy and potent. The air hummed around them, laden with unspoken tension. Sarah sensed the shift. She was no longer an inconsequential mother but a visionary appealing to his innate desire for meaning beyond status. Lansing straightened, a flicker of contemplation dancing in his eyes. You think I care about perceptions? I think you felt something. You have a way of finding the cracks in people, perhaps within yourself. This could be your chance to heal, she responded, her voice solidifying into the authority she felt awakening. His gaze turned contemplative, and she barely restrained her urge to push further. She could see that this negotiation was morphing from mere business to something deeper. What if he began to realize he was no longer on solid ground? What if he saw her as more than just a woman in crisis? She was exposing her vulnerability, but maybe, just maybe, she could alter the course of their interaction. Yet, even as he studied her, Sarah couldn't shake the gnawing doubt. Had she gone too far? Would he retaliate, dismiss her ambitions as weak sentiments born of desperation? Sarah, he finally spoke, breaking the spell. You've made a compelling case, perhaps too compelling. Let us see what I can do, but he paused, a grin touching the corners of his mouth. Your story better be as good as your pitch. As she looked into his eyes, a fragile connection sparked between them, shimmering with uncertainty and potential. But would it be enough to solidify her purpose or reveal a darker twist in their conversation? The stakes had risen drastically, and with Lena's resolve galvanized, what further steps would she take toward change before the day concluded? As dawn illuminated the sterile walls of the hospital, Sarah sat at Jack's bedside, contemplating the monumental decision she had to face. She had stepped into the world of Mark Lansing, a realm enveloped in privilege and power, and for the first time, a sense of agency surged within her. She was no longer the woman desperate for help. She had transformed into a strong advocate for her son's future. When Lansing had questioned her motivation, she took a deep breath and rebutted. Her heart raced, not from fear, but from a righteous clarity. My son deserves a chance, she had declared, and you can offer him that chance. Do not underestimate the ripple effect of your actions. The sudden vulnerability in that moment infused her with an iron will she hadn't previously recognized. She was laying everything on the line for Jack, her love crystallized into resolute determination. In the days that followed their meeting, she watched as reinforcement materialized. Lansing, intrigued by her vision of a philanthropic foundation, offered not only to cover Jack's medical expenses but to fund a broader initiative dedicated to childhood healthcare. It was a shift that could redefine their circumstances. Suddenly, the weight of the looming 2M bill transformed from an agonizing burden into an opportunity for innovation. The newfound partnership breathed life into a dream that had seemed elusive until now. Sarah threw herself into strategizing the Foundation's mission, flipping through notes, refining objectives, looking at broader societal implications. She leaned into her previous experience in negotiations and ensured that integrity and genuine concern colored the intent behind their initiative. Throughout this process, something remarkable happened. Sarah discovered her voice beyond being a frantic mother. She emerged as a visionary seeking not only to improve Jack's life, but to champion a cause that would resonate with countless others. Each conversation with the hospital staff, the charity representatives, and Lansing himself affirmed her solid confidence in navigating high-stakes discussions. Her competence had been recognized, and she earned respect she didn't know she could possess. Jack's recovery became a beacon of hope. He witnessed his mother evolving and it inspired him as much as it did her. Every day he grew a little stronger, and Sarah reveled in sharing stories of their journey with him. She transformed their shared struggle into lessons of resilience and courage. Empowered, accepting help in addition to giving it, she became a role model. Their bond thrived in mutual strength. Then came the day of the Foundation's launch. Standing at the podium, Sarah spoke with a passionate clarity that resonated through the crowd. We are here today not just to celebrate our children, but to ensure their futures. Every child deserves access to healthcare that protects their potential. Roars of applause met her declaration, an external validation of her internal evolution. The foundation would not only change Jack's fortunes, but it would also support families just like hers across the country. Ingrained in Sarah's message was her fierce independence and newfound willingness to accept support, a juxtaposition she had mastered. As she stepped off stage, she felt grounded and significant. In her journey from despair to purpose, she had proved to herself that strength lay not only in self-sufficiency but also in collaboration. It culminated in a well-deserved embrace of personal achievement. Looking back, Sarah knew this transformation was never just about overcoming hospital bills but reclaiming her identity and fortifying her aspirations. With a sense of profound fulfillment, she realized she was not just a survivor but a warrior forging a path for herself and others. This was the moment she had worked so hard to reach. And as she stepped into the sunlight with Jack by her side, her heart swelled not with fear but with an undeniable power. She had accomplished something extraordinary. Now, wouldn't you want to be part of powerful stories like this? Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about this ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to show your support. You need to subscribe now.